Hello and welcome. We have a big turnout today. Thank you all for being here. What that tells me is that this is a hot topic. We're dealing with a volley of volatility, still coping with uncertainty post-pandemic and more complexity than we've ever seen before. And at the same time, everything is ambiguous. You're probably seeing employees who are a little more brittle, a little more anxious, and the effects of that maybe changing the way that you lead, may even be causing you to not lead because you're taking such tentative steps. You may feel like you're walking on ice. So, this is an important question. What are the things that leaders ought to be considering at this exact point in time, midway through, a little more than midway through 2023? And I'm going to try to answer that by posing 5 questions, 5 important considerations, questions that you need to be asking yourself. And this is for leaders at any level, whether you're in the C suite or whether you lead some functional area in your organization, whether you lead projects or processes, and even for those who are considering how to be better leaders of themselves. You'll find relevance in all of those areas with these 5 questions. Now, for those who are new, because we do have a big group today, I suspect some of you are new. Let me give you some logistics about how to use Bright Talk. Welcome to the People First Potential channel. I've been presenting on Bright Talk once or twice a month for 6 years. So there's a lot of content here, and you're welcome to take any of that. It's all available on demand after the live presentation. Go back and look for some of those topics that we offer here related to leadership development, personal effectiveness, as well as managerial effectiveness. And if you have questions at all, please don't hesitate to be in touch with me. I'm Deb. And for our purposes today, probably the most important things to know about me are that I am certified as an executive coach, and I do consulting and training within a lot of different types of organizations. What I'll be talking to you about today is both evidence-based, because I prefer to offer what's founded in research, but I'll also round it out by giving you some examples from the clients that I'm working with and what I see directly in the field. Few things about Bright Talk. First of all, right below the slide, if you look just right below the slide, you'll see a drop down there. It's called Attachments. And when you open that up, it gives you all sorts of bonus materials that you can go out and use after the session. The one right at the top there is a PDF of the slides I'll be presenting today. I know some of you like to take those and print them hastily and take notes as we go. Feel free to do that. Just remember that the content here is copyrighted to People First Productivity Solutions. If you are looking for a way to bring content like this into your own organization, give me a give me an email. I'd be happy to talk with you about that. We find a lot of our clients here on Bright Talk and also over on People First Leadership Academy. I'd invite you to check us out in both places. On Bright Talk, it's these One Direction presentations that are available on demand after the live presentation. On the Leadership Academy, which is the second URL, peoplefirstpotential.com, those workshops come in a variety of formats. There are some on-demand pieces that are available, some in little short snack-sized lessons, 5 minutes or so. Others that are comprehensive, full immersion experiences with 18 hours of training and assessments and one-to-one coaching. And then everything in between that you could imagine. We do live interactive workshops. Those are free. They're 90 minutes on a variety of topics. What you'll find on the Academy, and there is a link to that in the attachments too, as well as the course catalog, you'll find about 60 different types of courses and different topics, that is, on demand, e-learning, interactive. So come in and figure out whatever you'd like to take advantage of. We just so enjoy getting to know people in a variety of places. Other things to know about Bright Talk. Well, it's meant to be interactive, so post your questions for me if you're here live. If you're attending later on demand, I also welcome your questions via email. I don't want you to feel like you missed something because you came after the live session. But those of you who are in the live session, By all means, post your questions. You can bank on the fact that your questions are probably similar to the ones that people later on will have. So help us all out and just post those questions for me. I'll try to answer them as they come. And no matter which way you're attending, I always very, very much appreciate when you leave me a rating and any comments that you might have. That helps me to know what you'd like to see in future sessions and to be able to continually improve what and how we're offering content here. All right, well, we better get rolling because this is a big topic. The 5 questions that I believe are most important for leaders to be asking right now are on screen, and I will take them one by one and give you a deeper dive. But notice, I'm not talking here about little questions. These are big questions. These are questions that merit more than a passing thought. They deserve more than punting it over to the HR folks to figure out. And they certainly require more than any sort of half baked milquetoast response. This isn't meant to be check the box and move on, one off effort, lip service kinds of stuff. Nope, these questions, they really do merit deeper thought, some genuine discussion, and perhaps even a sustained focus that will reset your culture. And it will be worth it. If you take that time, put that effort into these questions, it will be worth it in terms of the engagement and sustainability of the people in your organization. Well, let me start with the question that's right at the top. You might be surprised by the answer. What do you think? Let me just get your brain in motion here first. What do you think is the number one thing employees need most of all right now? And I'll pause, give you a chance to think that through. I know what a lot of you are thinking because it's what employees say. You're thinking they need more money. They need more flexibility to work remotely. They need work life balance or creative bennies to deal with burnout. And I agree, those are all things that people say they'd like to have. They're all things that at the surface seem to be nice to offer. The problem is they're band aid solutions. They aren't getting to the root cause of the problems. And although you might spend tremendous time and put a lot into developing programs that offer solutions like that, you might find yourself disappointed, despite all that effort and investment, that employees are still a bit disgruntled. And that's because you aren't getting to the number one thing that employees need most of all. What they need more than anything else is clarity. Clarity, when people have it, clarity leads to confidence. And only when people have confidence will they have the courage to take risks, to innovate, to push themselves outside their comfort zone, to do the kinds of things you're asking them to do in a world that is very volatile and uncertain. If you're not providing clarity, you can't expect confidence and courage to manifest out of nowhere. Now, I'm going to be a little hard on the folks at the top here for just a moment. I think there has been some laziness and lack of attention. In fact, you might even have, right in your leadership competencies or elsewhere in your organization, you might have put some value around this thing called dealing with ambiguity. I just flat out don't agree with it. I don't think it's fair to expect people to deal with ambiguity. of crash. So if you're dealing with ambiguity and you're putting value on ambiguity in your organization, you're missing the boat. Now, I just see a message here that says, perhaps some of you can't hear me. Um, I've got two of them now. All right. So we've got an audio issue. If anyone can hear me, go ahead and chat that to me so that I'm figuring out whether it was temporary or permanent. I don't know which way this is going to go, but I'm going to keep talking just in case it's recording. Okay, it says I'm back. What I was talking about, and it was good too. I'm sorry, whatever you might have missed. What I was talking about is how it's a cop out, a complete cop out, if you're expecting people to deal with ambiguity. If you're asking people to figure it out on their own, you're missing the mark. I consider this to be lazy in terms of management's responsibility. Instead of asking people to deal with ambiguity, it's your job to create and cascade clarity. It's your job to lift the fog. Otherwise, people feeling like they have to feel their way through the fog, they're going to slow down. They're going to be stressed. They're not going to be able to see the pathway and the destination. And that's going to cause them to proceed with caution and to feel a lot of extra stress that they shouldn't have to feel. So think about from the top, what's cascading? Is it clarity or is it a whole lot of reactive kind of stuff and unanswered questions where it's constantly changing and nobody knows how to keep up? Let me give you an example. Maybe you've heard something like this in your organization. Someone, perhaps the entire executive team, comes out and says, "We need new programs to ensure better quality assurance at product launch." And everyone says, "Oh, yeah, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do it." And if that's where the conversation ends, you know what happens next. You're wondering who, what, how, and why are we doing this? And pretty soon there are a lot more problems to be solved. There are endless meetings to admire that problem, which end up creating more problems because now you're in all these meetings. You didn't have clarity. People weren't on the same page. There was no true action items. In the comments, someone has just said, "I wish I could record those words and replay them." Guess what? You can. They're recorded for you right here on Bright Talk. You can come back on demand anytime and take whatever you thought was valuable here. Just make sure you source us because this is all copyrighted. Thanks for that. All right, so how do we do it? How do we get away from ambiguity and set clarity? This is how you start with expectations. You tell people exactly what's expected and who's expected to do what. How much of that is expected? How does this fall in sequence with other priorities? What's the deadline? When is that work expected to be done? And are there any procedures, any processes, any particulars about how the work is expected to be done? And don't forget to make it really clear. Tell people why the work matters. Give them context, give them the big picture. We need to improve quality assurance because our last three product launches have been fraught with unexpected problems that are really causing us to have some bad reputation and branding in the marketplace. We can't have that anymore. So you want to be able to make it very clear and contextual for people. This includes when you give people feedback. Now, after you've set clear expectations, feedback is essential and people want it, they expect it. You got to be candid when you're providing that feedback because candor is where clarity meets up when in that feedback. See, out of an abundance of niceness or fear that you might disenfranchise an employee, when you give feedback, you might either be holding it back or you might be beating around the bush instead of being straightforward, instead of being direct. But I want to reframe this for you. How would you like it if someone wasn't straightforward with you and you were making some sort of mistake, and now that reputation, because of the mistake and because of the habits you were forming, that reputation started to stick? Somebody wasn't very kind to you. They intended to be, but they weren't very kind to you if they let you continue because they were not clear about what needed to change. We'd all like to have genuine feedback that's intended to help us because then we can do our very best. And in fact, one of the reasons people leave organizations, the number one reason, is that they didn't feel that they were getting clarity about the expectations and how they could be successful. So give clarity at every level to your coworkers and colleagues, to your peers, to your direct reports, up and down, across and sideways throughout the organization. There ought to be feedback. That's where clarity comes from. That's how we maintain it. And that's where cultures really begin to thrive. So, that first question, don't forget it was, what's the number one most important thing that employees need? It's clarity. And I'm not going to let you duck or dodge or deny that. I'd like to see clarity be a much higher valued competency than this so called dealing with ambiguity, which is such a cop out. Okay, our second question that leaders need to be considering right now at this point in 2023, probably beyond. But that question is, why do leaders need to know themselves first? Now, just earlier today, coincidentally, I was giving a different presentation about this very topic. And I've presented that topic about 6 times so far in 2023 to much, much larger audiences than ever used to attend that topic. That's because there's some momentum. People are beginning to understand the importance of leaders understanding themselves, their values, what they stand for. Now, I understand also that there's often still a collective groan from the leadership team. A leadership team that's action oriented will look at a question like this and just feel like that sounds too touchy feely, too kumbaya, too much of a luxury versus a necessity. Not true. Leaders need to know themselves, to understand themselves, to position themselves consistently and predictably, because that's a big part of where they get buy-in. People can trust a leader who they know and understand. People see someone with high self awareness as credible. When you know who you are and why I should follow you, that's another form of clarity that you're giving me. So, what we're talking about here, really, it's a personal leadership philosophy. And that is a well researched field, one that maybe you should know about if you've never heard that term before. In the U.S. Army War College, in fact, all officers go through 2 semesters to understand leadership philosophy and to create their own. So, this is pretty important. Let me give you the definition that I like best. This comes from a guy named Ed Ruggiero. The words that you see in pink bold type, those are the steps that go into creating a leadership philosophy. And there is a link in the attachments. If you want to learn more about this, you can go to the session. It also has bonus resources you can access right away. And those will give you the blueprint, the steps for being able to create your own. You'll see samples and all kinds of other stuff there. But the definition, and the reason this matters is this: successful leaders know their personal leadership philosophy and communicate it by living it passionately every day in all they say and do. They've taken the time to determine who they are, their values and priorities. They know their course and have set their internal compass, which gives them greater self knowledge, greater self confidence, and improved effectiveness as a leader. This is accomplished by writing a personal leadership philosophy, which states the core values you live by, what you expect of your people, what they can expect of you, and how you'll evaluate performance. There's a whole lot wrapped up in that. If I were to give you the short version, it would be that you take time to work out what matters to you, which of your values are non negotiable, and how you're going to navigate through the work you do and the way you lead so that you show up with integrity, that what you profess to believe and what you do are completely synced up and not confusing. Now, here are the benefits that come from doing that. Again, all research based. Clarity's on the list, but there's a whole lot more here, and this is for you. As a leader at any level, boosting your trustworthiness and your believability and your credibility, being able to be more self assured and confident, being able to be authentic, which is, I think, more difficult today than it's ever been before, but also more important. For you to show up in a way that's consistent and predictable, that also plays into your trustworthiness. Right? People want all of this from you. They want to know who you are. You've got to be knowable. They want to know what you stand for. And they want to know that they can count on you, that you're not going to do Jekyll and Hyde stuff when critical incidents or something else pops up. Now, I'm going to give you a sample just to sort of see the flavor of what this is all about. This is from an actual leader who went through the process I'm describing to you of crafting her personal leadership philosophy. For her, it took a year to complete. You shouldn't rush this, but it doesn't always take a year. But she took the year to complete it. She's reported on it since then, and she says absolutely she has so much more clarity, confidence, and courage in everything that she does, inside and outside of work. If this is a snippet, if you wanted to read the whole thing, you could go over to the course that I mentioned to you. The bonus resources include this one plus a whole lot of other ones. She took the time to first define her values, and that's what took so long for her. She was quite conflicted. So she defined her values, and then she went through the extra step of creating a credo statement. That's sort of an abbreviated version of the whole leadership philosophy. And she said, out of her values, notice how these are all resonant, they all carry through. Out of her values of family first, resilience, humility, equality, and spirituality, her credo is that she said, I believe that there is more to every person than others can see. It's up to each of us to dig deep and find our passion and purpose. Doing that makes us worthy of being followed. And then her leadership philosophy, which is longer, but here's a snippet from it. Putting all these pieces together and rounding it out, she determined for herself and shared it with others. As a leader, I look for the hidden good in every person. I create opportunities to amplify hidden abilities and bring out the best from others. I do not need or want the spotlight, but I believe all people deserve moments where they can shine and are celebrated. I feel that it's my job to encourage, affirm, and challenge others so that they can identify and build their strengths. It's also my responsibility to give others feedback so they continually grow. Now imagine for a moment. Imagine taking the time to work all this out and to have such clarity about who you are as a leader. And then taking even more time to internalize this and to check and make sure that what you did truly represented what you were professing to believe. And then imagine sharing this with other people. Talk about a moment of truth and real accountability, because once you put that out there, you need to be really sure that your actions are going to live up to it. And this leader, she's done all of that, and she is doing incredibly well. She's a different person, she will tell you, than she was before she did this. It is a very profound exercise, something I encourage you to do if you've never done that before. Question 3, out of the most important questions leaders should be asking themselves in 2023, looking around, whether it's in a small team or an entire organization, how can we create a stronger sense of belonging and inclusion? Now, I don't want you to rely on your DEI initiatives to do this for you. Those are good and they're going to help. But inclusion and belonging is for everyone at all times, no matter what else is being done on a corporate basis. This is about making sure people feel like they're part of something meaningful and that they're valued and dignified in whatever work that they do. And I say that, I separate this from the DEI initiatives Because I can see fantastic best practices in diversity, equity, and inclusion, but then still go into an organization and walk through the halls with someone. It might be the CEO, it could be a senior manager, but I look for things and I notice, for example, does this person acknowledge the janitor? As we walk through the halls, does this individual greet people by name and ask about things that are meaningful to that individual? How do people react to this person I'm walking with? Do they smile? Are they happy? Do they say hello? Or do they scatter or avert their eyes as they pass by? I've been in some pretty uncomfortable elevator rides where it was clear that people did not feel connected to and really didn't want anything to do with the people at the top of an organization. And that's a shame. No matter how large your organization is, no matter how small your team is, what you're aiming for here is for every single person to feel a sense of connection with every other person, even if they don't personally know each other. What you need to make that happen, first and foremost, is a sense of two-way trust. Two-way trust changes how people interact with each other. Research around great places to work connect the dots for us. Those great places to work, they have high levels of both trust, two-way trust, and employee engagement. Now, trust goes both ways. We expect that leaders are going to be trustworthy. We expect people to trust the leadership of the organization. That might be a stretch. You can't just mandate it. You certainly can't just expect it because no title, no level on the org chart instantly imbues you with trustworthiness. I know we'd like to believe that that's the case, and once upon a time, maybe it was, but not anymore. Leaders have to behave in ways that are trustworthy. Not only that, leaders have to demonstrate that they trust other people. If you want to have a culture where trust, two-way trust, is something that's well distributed, it's up to leadership to behave in ways that model trustworthiness and to trust employees, to communicate enough about the organization that employees can feel a sense of belonging and inclusion that this has been shared with them, to trust people enough to solicit their opinions and to give them opportunities to interact with others. Here's a hallmark to look for. In those meetings that you might go to or that others might go to, is it always the same person? Is it always the manager of the department or the senior manager of the function? Why is that? Why don't we trust each other enough for representatives of our team and department to spread out who attends at what meetings? Does it always have to be the manager? I think that's a mistake. When you have high trust, you have a higher sense of engagement. When you have a higher sense of engagement, people are invested. They have that inclusion, that belonging. They're more likely to use their voice. Oh, and notice what comes next. Armed with a clear view of the state of the business, we're back to clarity. We can't do that if we're asking people to deal with ambiguity. But when they have that clear view, then people see themselves as being part of something greater, the company's mission and its values. So trust is pretty important, but it's also very misunderstood. I'm going to refer you over to People First Leadership Academy again. There's another presentation there. Be sure you get the course catalog. Another presentation there called um, something like two-way trust. I can't remember what the actual class is, but it's about two-way trust. And in that class, we're going to take a deeper dive than we can here about the 12 dimensions of trust. See, we think trust, we automatically think honesty and integrity. Turns out there are 11 other dimensions. And if you haven't thought about how important those are to being trustworthy, you could inadvertently do something that others view as mistrusting of you. So We got to work it all out. Just for the sake of time, I'll give you one quick example. It's a huge surprise to a lot of folks that whether you're available or not influences whether or not people will trust you. We all trust the people that make time for us, the ones who give us their full undivided attention and listen and are open and receptive to what we have to say. We are less likely to trust the people who barely interact with us, the ones who we have to try to get on their calendar, squeeze in 5 minutes 2 weeks from now. And when we get that 5 minutes, they're distracted. It's impossible to trust someone who is, without realizing it, signaling by their actions, signaling that, gosh, you really don't matter all that much. So why would you trust them? If I roll all this up, what we're talking about is something known as ennoblement. And it's not a made up word. It's sad that if you've never heard that word before, because it's such an important word, just not used very often. The concept is not something that we think about all that much. We think about enablement, giving people the resources to do the work, but we forget that ennoblement is every bit as important. To ennoble people means to make them feel worthy and important in the work that they're doing, to make sure they feel a sense of belonging and inclusion, that they have the big picture context so they know why their work matters. When you ennoble people, you do things like this. Right? You create mutual trust. You let them know how you value their contribution. You take a moment to make them feel special as an individual, not just as a group, not just as a job function. You treat people with dignity and respect. You have an attitude of gratitude. You appreciate not just the end result that takes 6 weeks to get to, but the day to day grind, the effort that they put in to get you to that final stage. You honor people, you admire their efforts and their contributions. That's ennoblement, and it counts greatly. And that's why this is so important. Uh, People are working hard, they're burned out, they're feeling defeated, they're feeling displaced. And you have a choice. You can either allow that to ride, or you can invest a little bit of time in ennobling people and giving them that sense of belonging and inclusion. When you do that, you'll begin to boost retention and engagement. You'll begin to better your team and your organization because the morale improves. But this is the fourth question. I needed to isolate it and ask it separately. Out of all five questions, the five big ones to ask in 2023, this one probably does get a little bit more airtime and attention because of things like quiet quitting, great resignation, fun employment, the gig economy. People understand they have choices. They are not married to life, to the job that they're in today. People are more nimble and flexible and willing to go other places and do other things. Now, here again, the answer that you might have coming into your mind first may not be the right one. When people leave organizations, they say things like, well, I left because I found a job that pays more money. So we think we need to boost retention and stay competitive by increasing salary and wages here. Not true. Gallup's work, their research, says that the reason people go looking for a new job in the first place has a lot more to do with how they're treated by their manager than it does with pay. In fact, pay is the fifth most common reason given when people who recently left are asked, what made you go looking for a new job in the first place? And the four reasons that come in more frequently than I needed more pay have everything to do with I had clarity from my manager. I understood the expectations of this job and got feedback so that I knew how to be successful. I felt like a part of a team, right? Everything we're talking about here is the real secret sauce of how to boost retention and stay competitive. It boils down to employee engagement, not just the name of some fancy survey, not just some vague concept that we're all supposed to do. Here's what it really means. Notice the cause and effect within this definition. Employee engagement is a heightened emotional connection. I'm going to pause there. Can't dodge it. It is emotional. We know that emotional connections count a lot more than the rational ones. The rational ones are, I could get a raise, I could get a promotion, I don't want to get fired. But emotional connections matter even more than those rational ones. So we want to be able to have belonging and inclusion and clarity so people feel good about the work they're doing. And when they do, when they have that heightened emotional connection, then, and only then, will an employee apply additional discretionary effort to their work. Additional discretionary effort, you might be spending a lot of time trying to get that from people, but you're focusing on the work instead of focusing on the emotional connection, and that's why your efforts are just not going as far as they could be. Now, here's why, in a single graphic, why engagement matters. Start with the box, the blue one called employee engagement. That puzzle piece leads to people stick around. Of course they do. When they have a heightened emotional connection, they stay with the organization. Your high potential people, the ones you want to retain, are more likely to stay with you. And when they stay with you, they apply additional discretionary effort. So that's what gives you productivity levels that increase. And this is by every possible measure: higher quality, higher quantity, lower overtime, less absenteeism and tardy, fewer workers' comp claims. Every single bit of that improves when engagement improves. And it's all common sense. When you have people who stick around and they're doing more work, doing it better, naturally the next thing that happens is improvements in customer satisfaction. And this glorious domino effect, well, uh, you're going to see more revenue coming in. You're going to see less expenses, if for no other reason than because you won't have to spend as much uh, trying to go out and find new people and hire them and then onboard them. Right? Fewer expenses means with revenue up, expenses down, your profit margin improves, and every single bit of that, back to the left side, every single bit of that starts with leadership development. Leaders who understand and enact the sorts of things that we're talking about here today. Engagement, employee engagement, is the primary enabler to execute successfully on any business strategy. Doesn't matter what you're looking for in your business, employee engagement is going to help you get there. You can't do it without employee engagement. So, this question, number 4, how do we retain people? Well, you engage them. Why do you engage them? Well, they're more likely to stick around, and we get lots of other business benefits out of that. Don't forget that the number one reason people leave their jobs has everything to do with managers. So managers need to be developed as leaders. They need to see their job as more than, let me finish the functions of this role. Let's say it's a finance manager. It's not just about closing out the books correctly every month. It's about engaging the people and giving a sense of belonging and inclusion to the people who are going to do that work. So, one last thing here, big question that every leader ought to be asking themselves. Truly, not flavor of the day, but truly, what are our priorities? I'm coming back full circle to clarity, but I have to point out that you can't have multiple top priorities that compete with each other. What is your true top priority, the most important thing? And that shouldn't be a moving target. Everybody, including leaders, need that kind of clarity. Otherwise, they are no longer going to be proactive. They're going to become much more reactive to whatever crops up, big and small. And priorities are going to shift, and nobody's going to know. Well, what is it? What's my priority today? Am I even doing the right work? Am I doing it the right way? Expectations change when priorities change, and that confuses people. It's not fair to people. Much better for leaders to take the time to knock it off, to become more proactive in all the ways that you see here on screen, starting with self awareness and self control. It comes from developing that leadership philosophy, the internal compass. And then the values that influence decision making, they also come out of having that leadership philosophy. And now we can be proactive. We know what we stand for, we know who we are, we know what we're aiming for, we have our priorities worked out. And from all of that, that clarity will come confidence and courage. Otherwise, this is what you've got. And I bet a whole lot of people here are experiencing this every single day. Let me know in the comments if that's true, right? Your days fill up with all this emergency, urgency, out of the blue stuff that you have to react to because nobody's taken time proactively to fix the root cause problems. And without clarity, people don't know what they're supposed to react to. So they delegate up to managers who put on their superhero capes and zoom in to solve problems that, if there were only clarity, people on the front lines could be solving for themselves. And you understand why it happens. It happens because we've all been rewarded for and conditioned to do whatever it was that made us successful in the past. So if you were that accounting manager and you were always rewarded for closing out the books correctly, you might not even know. And you may never have had the skills to do some of the other things we're describing here today. That's unfortunate. But any leader at any level can choose to do things differently for yourself, for your organization, for your team. You can go out and get these kinds of skills so that you don't have to be reactive all the time, regardless of what's going on around you. At an organizational level, let me come back up here to the top. Right? This is from a book called The Advantage by Pat Lencioni. These are the questions, come in full circle, to be proactive, to create clarity instead of asking people to stay mired in ambiguity. These are the questions every organization should be asking. They're big questions. They might seem like a luxury. Oh, we'll do that whenever we get time. You're never going to get time. So don't do that. Make time to create clarity. When you make time to create clarity, a lot of this other stuff works itself out, and you will find that you have more time, more commitment, more engagement than you ever had before. And with that, everything becomes easier. So, those are the 5 big questions. If you'd like some help in your organization trying to work them out, hey, please email me. If you'd like to learn more about some of these subtopics, go over to the Leadership Academy. It's on screen here for you. It's also in the attachments. And be sure to keep coming back here to Bright Talk. I always enjoy seeing people and some familiar names in the chat. I enjoy being able to interact with you in live time too over on the Academy, but whatever format you prefer, I hope you keep coming back for more, and I hope you leave me a comment to let me know what you liked and what you'd like to see different. We're about to finalize the 2024 calendar, so send me your ideas if you've got some hot topics you'd like to see.